And we are live, all the way live. Welcome, everyone, to the pandemic edition of Product Tank. We're doing something new and different, combining cities, something kind of fun that Mind the Product is trying. So this is a combination of Orlando, aka Central Florida, and Raleigh. Say hello, Dan, from Raleigh, North Carolina.
Hey,
Hey.
I see a few familiar faces on here.
Yeah, this is fun. And, you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens after all this settles out sometime in 2021. Maybe this is a start of something new. Sister cities, who knows? So, thank you.
Episode 17.
Exactly.
Let's get her
Although
going.
it was Orlando's 17. It's probably like Raleigh's 25. Who knows? But, you know, it's interesting. So we're glad everybody's here. And Reed, I want to welcome my buddy and co-host Reed Manchester, who we need to raise a glass to right now. If you have one, you know, we do encourage liberal amounts of libations during these product tanks. Reed, congratulations on your new position.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. In fact, my manager is going to be here tonight, I think. So I hope you heard that. I'm very pleased.
Break up.
So extra libations then.
Yeah.
Change is as good as a rest, they say.
Why don't you tell us where you're at now? Where did you land, as they say?
I left AAA and have joined a company called BestPass, which is a 100-person strong data management company in the tolling space, as in road tolling. They simplify tolling for giant trucking companies and fleet owners. Consolidating all
no
that data
privacy or data issues at all there, right?
Probably limited, not a lot, no consumer data to protect, but corporate data perhaps.
Nice. How's it going so far?
It is phenomenal. It's really nice to actually have a product manager title, which is always nice, but also to not have a full day of meetings where you don't actually accomplish anything, actually see progress each day. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. Congratulations. Awesome. So we are just getting rolling here. We have something new and different tonight. We've never done a panel before, Reed, and we thought, you know, with this group, this esteemed panel here, we got Gary Price, Info Docket. We've got Daniel Ayala, Managing Partner, Founder of Socratic, and Neil Shah, Head of Product and Identity for Lyft, and we'll hear more from them later. But we just thought, let's just open this one up. Let's do it as a panel. We did sort of source a lot of questions from them initially, and I'm going to go ahead and put that. Why not? In the interest of data transparency and sharing, I'm going to share the questions that we've already been kicking around amongst ourselves here with everybody. Let me grab that link for you. And of course, where is it when I need it? Reed, buy me 30 seconds.
How can I buy you 30 seconds? I don't have access to Mentimeter. What I could do is talk a little bit about MTP, right?
Yeah, let me do that. I'll give you a slide to land that.
Thanks.
Boom, there you go.
Boom. So what you see in the background here, my virtual background, is actually from the organization that backs these product tank events. Mind the Product is sort of the global leader, thought leader in product. And they have incredible amounts of resources on their website through conferences, 2 giant conferences a year, and they back 200 plus of these meetup groups around the world. So they're really creating a culture and a community around product and disseminating best practices. The level of knowledge is just staggering. And every time I get engaged with a meetup group or with the organization itself and its education and sharing events, my mind is blown. It's just the best of the best. There's actually a podcast. If you're interested in looking up the podcast, that's something I listen to regularly. It's fun as well as highly educational. I forget what it's called, but I'll pop back on later when I figure that out.
Yeah, I just want to say the recent edition of their conference, which went online, was phenomenal. And I won a free book. Look at that.
Ooh.
This is Cheryl Platt's. The book just came out like a week ago, published from Rosenfeld Media, Design Beyond Devices. It's a phenomenal book, and I'm getting the print edition shipped to me. So all kinds of goodies like that if you hang out in this community. Lots of fun stuff. Great people you meet. And what else does this community have to offer, Reed?
They've got a wonderful chat, a Slack channel, a
Boom,
series of Slack
definitely.
channels. Yeah, very useful. And
Yeah.
you can see some of them there, including job boards. So if you're interested in getting into product, if you're not yet a product manager, you'd like to be, that's a great place to find a position. Prioritized is a regular newsletter that talks about all things product.
Yep.
And what else we got?
We got
Training courses.
and boom, like you said.
There's the job board.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the podcast is called The Product
Up to now?
Experience.
It's over 200. Maybe
200,
Dan knows.
yeah.
What's our running count of product tanks around the world?
It's definitely in the multitudes of hundreds. So they even have a new membership that you can join and be a part of and get access to discounted content.
Oh,
and
sell
other
it,
cool
baby.
events.
Tell it. What do we get with our
yeah.
membership?
Too much to name. It's the best thing since sliced bread for product
Nice.
managers. I would definitely check out their website because I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Nice. All right, good. Well, you guys already put some data in the room. I appreciate that. We did put the link in chat. So those are the topics there. If you see that Google Doc, the topics that we're teeing up for tonight. But you're going to bring more. There's a lot of intelligence in this room. There's 16 people here who have who day in and day out do product and make decisions that involve privacy and other considerations. So we're going to get into all that. But let's get a little bit more data in the room right now. We're going to go ahead and put up a couple more polls just to get some more info here. So let me go to the next poll. I'm going to snap a screen of this one. So lovely. Ann Arbor, Orlando. Damn, Raleigh has more than Orlando. Look at that. Congratulations, Raleigh.
Orlando's looks like Florida on the side there. It's like California, maybe.
Maybe. All right, so I'm going to ask this question. Let's put this in the room. Privacy is important. There's three sort of continuums or dimensions here. To your customers and users, and you can rank strongly agree or disagree all the way to strongly agree. Then also from your company leadership's perspective, from the C-suite to the VPs to whoever is above you. And then to you, right? Basically, it's important to you as a product manager. So let's get all those data points already in the conversation, just to give our panelists something here to get going. And we got 19 in the audience, and I see 3 have voted. So we'll give folks a minute here to put in some votes. And y'all are looking at my desktop. Ay, qué pena. So embarrassing. All right, there we go.
Yeah, I think you have to go to menti.com and use that code at the top of the screen.
Yeah, thank you. In case anyone didn't know, Reed, if you can pop that in again. And we'll use this a couple times tonight, also for Q&A coming up in a bit. Okay, let's get a couple more votes in the room. We've got 6 people voting. 19 in our audience here. Beth, hey Beth, go to the website menti.com, menti.com, and put in that number that Reed just popped in, 6879771.
I think she's looking for the Q&A.
Oh, the Q&A? All right.
She already has questions. She's ahead of the curve.
Oh man, okay. Q&A is coming shortly. We'll give you that in a minute, but we're just doing this poll right now. So privacy is important, and I think we'll get probably enough data here to get a reading. What I'm reading, just my quick interpretation, is it's out there in the world where we're all hearing worst case scenarios. Feel free to put some of your favorite privacy fails or data fails in chat. It's more and more something that consumers are educated about, users care about. And I think our company leadership is lagging. I think that sounds about right. But luckily, our product management group is just ahead of that leadership. So just based on what we're seeing here. Nice. By the way, in Mentimeter, if you saw hills and valleys here, you'd see a distribution in votes. So this little hills ascending says, you know, the majority of the votes are stacking up here, right? There's consistency or consensus in those votes. Let me put another poll in the room. I'm going to screenshot this. Let's do another one. Curious about this. The company I most trust with my data is, here's some rank voting. Let's see where this sorts out. Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon. Neil, I was really tempted to do Uber and Lyft in here, but I didn't do that.
You also didn't put in none as an option, which would suit me quite well.
Yeah, David Bates put in chat, where is none of the above? Interesting. So Apple's, Amazon's climbing a little. I asked this question to Daniel in our pre-call yesterday. I won't say what Daniel said until after the voting. For me, I guess, I don't know about you, Reed and Dan, but for me, no surprise, Facebook is in the trailing position.
I'm actually surprised that Amazon's above Google. I wonder if that has to do with what we think they're doing with our data or something to that degree. But
Yeah.
I have both Alexas and Google Homes in my household, so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, were you on our call yesterday and just didn't announce yourself?
Nope.
Oh. Nice. All right, let me get a couple more votes in. We got 11 votes here. There's 19 in the room. If you just joined us, go to menti.com and put in that code and give us your thoughts and your votes. Beth Kennedy says, just watch C-SPAN and you'll go back to paper mail. All right, let's go one more poll. Get one more poll in the room. Oh, actually, no, that's for later. So Beth, you asked about questions. So from now on, we can put questions in the room. We've already got a brilliant question now. How now, brown cow? Which way is up and what time is love? Gary, what music reference is that? What time is love?
I was going to give you an question of what about which way is up? I don't know. I don't know that one.
Okay, ready? KLF, Remember that?
Yeah.
Okay.
About which way is up? Remember that movie and that theme song?
Right. All right, I'm gonna pull the poll, leave that poll open. You guys can start popping in questions, more meaningful questions than what I did. That was just sample data. And let me go ahead and let's bring our panel into the room right here. So rounds of applause, virtual rounds of applause for Gary Price, Daniel Ayala, and Neil Shah. Thank you, you three, so much for coming to this Product Tank. We're going to try to cover a lot of ground in about 45 minutes here. I think it's going to be pretty rich and juicy. And if it's really good and people want to stay on, we'll go a little longer, but probably not much over the hour. I'm going to just have each of them do a couple minutes to introduce themselves. So I'll ask in the order you see on screen. What you do, what shingle you hang out there, and how about just express your surprise or not at that poll around Apple versus Google versus Facebook versus Amazon. So Gary, why don't you kick us off? Who are you? What do you do? And tell me your reaction.
Who am I? Who am I? And why am I here?
There you go. Yes.
Thank you, Curtis.
Yes.
By the way, what is number one on the poll at the moment?
Apple was leading, Amazon just trailed under that, Google was in the middle, and Facebook was crushed at the bottom.
That sounds about right. For me, Apple would be the top choice of those four.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, for us, Curtis will know that I love to say hello from just outside of Washington, D.C. My name is Gary Price. I'm actually in Silver Spring, Maryland. And I am a friend of Curtis and a friend of Dan, and hopefully before the end of the evening, a friend of Neil. Back in the day when I used to travel and go use ride services, a big user of his company. I am a librarian by trade. I do a lot of consulting. I'm a librarian who doesn't actually work in a library. I serve for two members of the panel, or for one member of the panel and one of our hosts. I serve kind of as a personal librarian to them.
Yes, he does.
I am always curating, if you like, something that librarians do, curating new articles, reports, data, all that, and sharing it with them. So in addition to doing a lot of consulting, working with Curtis on some projects, speaking with Daniel, I run two different websites, which I'll be happy to share with you. One of them is called InfoDocket, which I will paste in here right now, and which is a daily update of news, often data news, lots of privacy stories, new online tools and resources, things you might expect from a librarian, but a lot of things that you might not. And then right below that, which here you go, right below that is something else I'm doing these days, and I invite all of you to take a look. Think of this, the link, the bit.ly link, as kind of a virtual new bookshelf. For those of you who might remember when you would go into a library, especially a college library, you would find often at the front of the library a list of new books and so forth. What I'm doing in the process of curating Info Docket, and something I also curate daily for the Association of Research Libraries, I'll toss that link in as well. I'm always coming across all sorts of new data-rich reference reports, things with data files associated with them. And what I'm doing, instead of just posting them on my site, I'm actually trying, with the suggestion of people like Curtis, I'm now trying to make it a little bit more useful and a little bit more organized and post everything to that spreadsheet. So you'll find a wide variety of reports, updated daily. Often those reports are added the day that they're released. So you take a look. One of the other things I'm personally interested in is the long-term preservation of the internet. And one of the things that I do, and something that all of you could do if you're interested, is when you come across something on the open web, and something that might have lasting value, not only for you, but for others, is make a copy of it, add it to the Wayback Machine. So everything that I link on any of my sites, if you scroll down, Curtis, you can take a look.
And also be sure to give to the Wayback Machine at Christmas time. They always pitch right now, and I always give because they're awesome. Yeah.
The URL is actually web.archive.org for this feature. But one of the features, and I'll go very quickly, is that you can actually archive anything in Wayback on demand, and that includes PDFs. More specifically, why am I here in terms of privacy? Well, I'm a self-taught privacy guy. I learned a lot from my friend Daniel. We've spoken together on several occasions. But I became interested in digital privacy probably 7 or 10 years ago, when something in the library world took place that really hasn't been fixed. One of the things that most of you are probably aware of at this point is that most public libraries, for example, offer downloadable ebooks. My interest in privacy really began when, about 7-10 years ago, Overdrive, the major provider of those ebooks to libraries, began a relationship with Amazon.com. That is, when you borrow one of those Overdrive books from your public library, you can, with one click, put it directly on your Kindle. Great idea, easy service, all of that. But my problem for the library community is that we don't, as a community, libraries, don't disclose this in what I believe to be a proper manner to this day. In other words, Amazon, when you borrow that book, gets a record of what you're borrowing from the library. And that's where my interest in privacy began. It has expanded since then. I'm also fascinated with how the internet works. So there's a privacy angle to that. So I think that's a good introduction. Thank you, Curtis.
Oh, thank you, Gary, very much. And just to show you how useful a personal librarian is, Gary gives me these great leads every day, makes me look smart, essentially. And today he gave me something cool. He knew I would like this. Blinkist. And you know, as product people, we like to always find fun new products and services. And this company is doing some neat things, kind of just-in-time learning. And they're based in Berlin, Germany. And I'm going to just go ahead and look. I just want to point out something right off the bat. This is for Daniel Shaw and Gary's benefit. Their privacy policy, I don't know, your mileage may vary, but it looked pretty decent. And I'm going to put it in chat here, and you can tell me. But that's one of the things as product people we think about. Shit, what should go in our privacy policy? Let me copy and paste so-and-so's, and then I'll let legal look over it. But you know, that's a whole thread we can talk about in a minute with the full panel. But thank you, Gary, for showing me Blinkist. Appreciate that. Daniel, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. My name is Daniel Ayala. I'm in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Although I am not a Wolverine, I'm a Badger. Have to disclose that. And for the last 9 months, I've been working at Michigan State University. So I'm all sorts of confused as to what collegiate allegiances I have, but they're all in the Big Ten, so I guess that's okay. I am I call myself a recovering CISO. I've been a security professional coming up through technology and infrastructure for the last 25 years. There aren't a lot of us that started out in security, but I was lucky enough to do so in the 90s when the internet was still getting going, and got to be part of building out some of the core and the backbone and some of the large enterprise security in its earliest days and growing along with it. I've been in pharma, I've been in higher ed, I've been in financial services, I've been in media and publishing and in library and in tech. And now I'm doing consulting. I'm bringing that expertise from large business through my company called Socratic to everything from startups to medium and large businesses that may need outside help in figuring out where security and privacy live in their company and in their business and their products, and helping them bring that message into the business itself and out of just the technology. I'm a privacy advocate. I'm a big fan of having people have an understanding of balance and transparency and meaningful choice in the systems they use. And it's really great to be able to talk with all of you to try and help you bring that same kind of message where it makes sense and figure out where along the continuum it makes sense for the products you're working on. I also have another small venture on the side called Mentor Core. Security, privacy, compliance, and ethics are oftentimes, they're isolating fields. They're things that are different than a lot of other businesses, but very similar to each other. So we're trying to build a community to bring people in those fields together to work on career development and growth and networking. So it's been fun to take that people side of my experience and bring it across the field too.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you. Awesome. And last but not least, Neil, I'm popping all of your LinkedIn profiles, by the way. Gary, yours is in there. Daniel, I just popped in yours. Neil, I hope I grabbed the right link for you.
You did.
I scrolled it earlier today and said, God, I forgot this guy was at Twitter. He's the founder of Amply, which is this cool thing giving to nonprofits. And now he's doing product and identity at Lyft. And you got like a JD, right? You got your surprise. This is a lawyer that's turned product. So
yeah, thank you. And you can see my LinkedIn URL actually obfuscates my name as a little privacy hack.
I see that.
Because there's a lot of services out there that actually join your identity across the web and then market to you. Random story. So my name's Neil. Thank you for having me. What has kind of led me to become a PM for user trust and identity. I think about trust and safety at Lyft today is I go back to this experience I had when I was at Twitter, and we were rebuilding all the privacy controls. Nobody wanted to do that. But Neil, you're the lawyer. I'm a recovering lawyer now, a decade ago, and I worked at startups, in the legal department. But I worked on part of the GDPR elements, and this moment where I was working with Jack Dorsey, and he was like, "I want my mom to understand how to turn everything off. Just turn off all the privacy. Just I don't want." That's what she calls me and she asks me, what do? I want a master toggle. And I loved it. I was just like, yes. Having worked in ads and actually knowing a lot about how Amazon uses your data for advertising purposes, because they were a former client at a company I was at. Mm-hmm. I know how this data is being used. And I love the fact that it takes a leader to just make this declaration, we're going to have a master off switch. And that can push through a lot of conversations. I think about product management as being an advocate for users. And so that's what I do today. I've been on the user growth equation while I was at Twitter. I worked on information integrity, privacy, and I'm really excited to chat with you all today.
Nice. Wow. So I think everyone can tell this is a pretty awesome panel here we have. And so I put in chat again the link to Minty. So that's a place you can put in questions for the panel and you can rank them, like thumb them up or down and votes. And frankly, the first question up there looks great place for us to start. And I'm just going to put it out to the whole panel. What are just the table stakes when it comes to ensuring security, privacy? And they said in an IT product, irrespective of any compliance or industry standard. Here, I'll share it on screen. This is the question here. So Neil, do you want to take a crack at that? What are table stakes for you today?
I think it depends on the size of the company and the trade-offs. The larger the company, you're going to have a lot of things you need to think about in terms of your standards. It's also a risk equation with the type of data you're storing. If you're storing payments information, it's very different than if you're just storing anonymous usernames, right? And so there's a risk equation that you think about. What information do I have? What is the worst possible thing that could happen? If all of this data leaks, then the table stakes is it should be that secure, right? And I think like if you have a security department, they will work with you on those things. But I think like I've been at 2 public companies. The security standards and the privacy standards are incredibly high. So luckily, I don't need to figure out what the requirements are in, say, in India with the new GDPR or whatever. I have a legal team that can just tell me here are the requirements.
Yeah.
But I also think it takes a good product manager to translate what legal is saying and what the user might want. And then putting those into like actual building the product, right? If you just translate it, it doesn't work. You need to actually think carefully through the user experience.
Right. It's like I referred to the privacy policy from that Blinkist earlier, and I put that link in there. It's a lot more than just having a policy. It's how we design and the kind of features that we put in and how we design for privacy feature by feature, right? Yeah. Let's get Daniel's take on it. What are table stakes for you, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm just going to riff before I go into that. I'm going to riff on that last piece about the design. I don't get, Facebook gets a lot of negative press for the way that data is collected and used. But the one thing they do really well is they have a very easy to read their privacy essentials page is actually one that I model other things after. Now, granted, it does say we're going to take all the data and we're going to use it, but it does it in a very clear and concise way. And it needs to be, those things need to be very human readable, like back to Jack Dorsey's mom. These things need to be readable. And I use my mother because she's a professor, researcher. She's a lot of the type of clients that we'd be building systems for. And those are the kind of people that these things need to be clear to.
So you have kind of, does it pass the mom test kind of thing?
Yeah, and not in the pejorative. My mother doesn't do technology, but rather my mother as client in this case.
Yeah, right. And I've got Blinkist up on screen. I don't know. To my eyes, that looked like a really readable, understandable. Did you scan this? What does this look like to you, Daniel, with all your experience? And you advise companies on how to write these things. Does this look decent?
It's one of the better, although I'd say that there's steps to even go one further. Bullet point statements. We do this.
Right.
We don't do this. This is what you have control over. This is what you don't.
Yeah.
You take it out of the legal form, and maybe that's in many cases there's the legalese version, and then there's an abstraction of it.
That's kind of what they have, because you can go. They say for the detailed description, go here, and then you get more of the, technical.
I've had a lot of time to run into this one. But
I'm looking at the scroll bar here. This goes on quite a ways. I'm just going to scroll it as you talk.
Unfortunately, though, there's a lot of requirements when you actually get to the legal. There are a lot of requirements around the world, and if you're not in just one jurisdiction, there's a lot of things that are going to come into play that you do have to account for. California means we have to say this. Europe means I have to say this and include this address. India and Brazil have something that's close but can't be done in the same way. So it does get the formal version does get very lengthy, depending on the number of jurisdictions you're in, just by mere necessity of compliance.
Yeah.
But as it comes to table stakes, I think more and more people that are, so if you look at this in the consumer space, B2C, The requirements are becoming more about transparency, more about meaningful choice. Even though the U.S. doesn't have one or even 4 or 5 now privacy laws across some states, and we don't have a national one yet, we are seeing the impact of overseas laws like GDPR that are companies have taken the stance of giving those kind of rights and controls to all of their users, and people are starting to see that and beginning to expect it more. And back to the question about which company do you trust more, I think that those that do those kinds of things will build customer trust, and there's increasing research that says that those that have customer trust in this way will see business value as a result of it.
Yeah. Well, that was, look how it took me that long. Well, you were talking and I was scanning this thing all the way down.
You always have the California part.
Yeah, this is, to me, this looked pretty robust to my untrained eyes.
I think though a few people are going to go there, and I think like when you design products, as you're entering in this information, like if I'm providing my birth date to you, there should be a reason why you need that, right? Like you need to verify I'm over 13. Just tell me that.
Right.
But if you're just going to, send me some kind of gift card on my birthday and it's optional, then I think those are good ways to not collect that information if it's not necessary, and then the user knows as you're going along.
Right. Yeah. And fight the urge to collect it because you might need it later.
Yes.
No, we must collect and hold everything.
Haven't figured it out yet, but I'm sure we'll figure something out. Only take what you need, use it for as long as you need, aggregate it. So now the security side of me will come out and say, aggregate it and get it out of there. Get the raw stuff out of there as fast as possible if you don't absolutely need it.
Right.
Because it's a liability. It adds risk. If you need it, keep it. The data collection on its own does not necessarily mean a privacy violation.
Right.
But if you keep it, collect it, what happens, back to Neil's point earlier, what happens when that ends up on the front page of the Wall Street Journal? What's the impact of it?
Yeah. Got it. Gary, what are your thoughts? And there's another question on the table here coming up too about spyware disguised as productivityware. But if you want to respond to any of these thus far.
I'll just like to respond that, and Daniel and I have talked about this in some of our presentations. I think a lot of this comes down to user education and awareness of these issues. I think if the general public, people who those privacy policies are supposedly written for, had a better understanding of these issues from the outset, I think that would be a good thing. I think there's a huge role for the community that I work with, the library community, to become disseminators of that knowledge. And I believe that awareness about why you want to opt in, why you want to opt out, what needs to be part of the basic education in today's society. These things should be taught at the youngest level. What are the pros of sharing your data with this company? What are the negative aspects of sharing? And I think those ideas, that mindset needs to be taught from the earliest days of one's education.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people click on things because they don't know not to click on it, if you know what I mean. They have no idea what this means, not only for them at that exact moment, but what are the long-term ramifications of why they are making this selection or not making this selection. Yeah. There's a knowledge base that has to come from, and it needs to be explained and taught, especially and it needs to be done not at the last second before you're actually wanting that service or not wanting that service.
We talked about this in the pre-call yesterday, but you kind of raised it when you talked about education. And kids today, just take my kid, he's 12 years old. He seems to be completely good. He knows natively that people track him, and he's quite okay with that. Daniel, do you think that kids today are pretty cool with all this, or where do you assess kind of the next generation coming up, and or even millennials? What
I think
different generations
expectations we give them credit for.
Yeah.
We, meaning those of us who are not millennials, or those who are who've come through and lived a different life, or we're further on in our age. I think that they're really aware of privacy, but they're making decisions that to our naked eye doesn't necessarily feel like it. I think they're very conscious of the decisions they're making and are thinking about what it means, but they're looking at it differently. They're looking at it in terms of what happens if this all ends up on Instagram. They're looking at it in terms of to whom am I disclosing this and for what purpose? But they also understand the value of the services that they get in return for that.
Mhm.
I think the one piece I think that they're still formulating at those earlier years is how these things all come together into a bigger picture of them long down the road. And I think this is something we all struggle with.
Yeah.
Then I think that part is becoming clearer as more of these aggregated pictures of people are starting to be leveraged in new ways.
I think that that's correct, Daniel. And I would argue too that when I work with younger people, it's, well, I'm just sharing this piece of data with company A and this piece of data with company B. But something that we spoke about on the pre-call yesterday was the ability for a third company to take all those disparate data points and mash them together, as you just said, and basically create a complete dossier on somebody.
Yeah,
Right.
and for me, where that becomes really scary and is with facial recognition software. Like now you can real time, you can be walking down the street and now all this information is known about you, or you're using TikTok and this is all going to a foreign government, right?
Right.
Like what are the implications of that? What are the trade-offs? I think the earlier point, the younger generation understands that there are social kind of impact to sharing information, but they're not understanding like how this data is being used to profile them.
Yeah. Well, let me put you on the spot on that. Since you worked at Twitter, feel free to comment on either Twitter or Lyft. Why don't you personalize it a little bit? What have you seen or noticed that has hit the creepy line for you?
I mean, the creepy line is really interesting, but I think there's this controversy about better ads. And do you want to see better ads or do you want to see garbage ads, right? And it's like,
Right.
you asked, and I used to be in the ad business, and at the time it was like, oh, of course you want more personalized ads. But now that I've left that behind, I'm like, I don't want more personalized ads. I would rather pay for a service.
Right.
And for me, I think like that might become more interesting over time. Like more publishers, right, are moving towards paywalls, and so you can make those trade-offs. Like, don't use my data for anything, but I will pay you in this value exchange. And so I think the older generation is in this like everything should be free and supported by ads, but maybe there's a shift to just a pay to play model.
Yeah.
But we're in the ugly middle ground right now where you're paying to get ads turned off or you're opting out of personalized ads, but the data is still being collected and sold. we're in that, you're losing in both cases.
Coming and going. Yeah. Yeah. Indeed. There's a question here that someone asked, and I'll just read it again. So with the rise in working remotely, what are the thoughts of the panel on the rise of spyware disguised as productivityware? They didn't call anyone out, but what jumps out for you all in that category?
I can't help but, so with Slack being acquired today, there was a lot of discussion amongst my colleagues and peers around how much of that valuation was the data that was within the Slacks, and how much is product. So just that's where my head went with this question. I don't know if that was the intention of the asker, but
quite timely. Yeah.
I think there's Grammarly, right, is a good example.
Oh yeah.
A lot of IT departments say you're not allowed to use certain types of Chrome extensions. And there's this balance of like, there is this cool app, but now you're giving it all of your data. And I think it's the job of good IT department to see the potential risks in that. It'd be great if this was aggregated and made really clear so that IT professionals could more systematically help the end user, like help their employees make those choices. But I think realistically, you just need to block them.
Yep. There's another one popping up here. Working with the company who is moving to a new HRIS system, who owns the data has become an interesting topic, especially when it comes to liability. Who should be responsible for a breach? Anyone want to bat at that one?
Oh yeah, this one's coming up in a lot of industries. I'm near Detroit, and the discussion happens a lot between the cars. So the first party automakers, the GMs, the Fords, the Fiat Chryslers, and the OEMs that make parts for them. And there's all this data. There's all this data coming in. Who owns the data and who's responsible for it? So I think that this is one of those things. The answer is it depends. It depends on the arrangements that you have. It depends on the contractual agreements. It depends on what data you're collecting. When a breach happens, I promise you, all of the attorneys in the room will point at each other. And I say that lovingly. I have a lot of some of my closest friends are those attorneys. But when it comes to liability, you need to do all that you can to recover those. But the liability at the end of the day there isn't a clear answer, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But discussing it beforehand as you're making the agreements is warranted.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's super hard depending on if you're at a bigger, kind of like a medium-sized company, you have more to lose with some of these data agreements.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in this position. I was the only lawyer at this late stage company in ads, and we were negotiating contracts with a small startup. And I'm like, they could have a data breach, and yeah, we could have this an indemnity clause, but the company will just go under, and it's the brand loss that really hurts. And so I think, like, if you're depending on which side of the table you're on, it's very interesting, and there's not that much you can do about it.
Yeah. I want to go back to the creepy line, and I want to ask Gary this question. Gary, there's a couple tools that you use to kind of know what sort of snooping, like when we go to just any website, there's all sorts of things that are happening behind the scenes. What is one of the tools that you use a lot to sort of sniff out?
There are two, and one Daniel can talk about, because it's basically a version of what he runs locally. But the service that I've really fallen in love with is called nextdns.io. And this does all sorts of, it's all web-based. So again, they are seeing what you're blocking and not blocking. But it allows you to do a lot of the things that you once had to do locally on your computer on their site, and it doesn't take up your system resources. So this will allow you, and they provide a lot of analytics, so you can see what you're blocking, where those trackers are coming from, that type of thing. And it's either free or relatively inexpensive. But again, there's a third party involved. The other tool that I use just to learn about how the data is flowing over the internet is a tool called urlscan.io. And you can just toss in a URL, and their servers are based in Europe, but you get a good idea of all the different data centers you're hitting, some of the things that are, all the JavaScript that might be embedded in the page, that type of thing. So
let's go with the one that we were looking at earlier, the Blinkist site. I think that's what their website was, Blinkist. So public scan.
It'll take a minute.
Yeah. Daniel, don't you run something like this locally using a Raspberry Pi type of thing?
Yeah, I've got Pi-hole, which is a localized version on a little Raspberry Pi on the network here that blocks it at the whole house until my son wants to get to the to the free ads and to get more berries in the video games.
So you can see there, all the different domains it's hitting, and you can click on any of those and get even more detailed information. Right. It also gives you, using a third party, it gives you on the right column, gives you an idea of some of the technologies, Amazon Web Services, CloudFront, Cloudflare, some of the different technologies that are embedded in the site.
Right, and as we scan Blinkit's privacy doc, they called out those and many, many more, and how they were very, to me, they look pretty public about all of that, who they integrate with and backend services they connect to.
I have a question though, like what's the point of this, right? Like as a consumer, how much choice do you have? Like use Blinkist or don't, right? Like use Facebook or don't.
That's a good question.
Well, I think it's coming in the form of, I'd argue it's coming in the form of understanding a level of transparency that's there. That to what extent are there buried APIs and services. If you're blocking it, then if you're blocking it your own, either in your own host file or at your network or next DNS, and saying I don't want anything to go to any Facebook domain, then this becomes more of a research exercise. But it's more just of awareness.
Yeah.
At what level the company's being transparent about their interactions.
I think it's a good education tool as well to give people an idea of how this whole thing works, if that's what your need is.
Yep. Dan Moore posted a +1 for Pi-hole. Thank you for the spelling on that. It's P-I, as in Raspberry Pi. Is that why it's P-I-hole?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. Yeah. Nice. And he adds, was amazing political season in a battleground state. I imagine it was. We'll throw another question in. Should privacy features precede or follow regulation on privacy?
That's a loaded one. I think as a PM, like, it's hard to predict the future, and then when things do come out, it may not pan out. Do not track was very hard thing to implement, and then it did not really pan out. Correct me if I'm wrong. If other people feel differently. But I think if you think about what is right for the user, if you don't need to retain data, don't retain it for a certain number of years, right? Like, you can design something that you as a consumer would want to use.
Yeah, that's the same advice I was going to say, Neil. You pretend it's your data going through there, and then think ethically. One of the things that one of the exercises that's interesting to do is do an ethical boundary exercise and say, where are we going to draw before you get to that point? Where do we want to draw the lines of where we're comfortable doing and not doing, and use that as some of the litmus test as you make some of these decisions around how you will implement these kind of features. The other is look to your customer base, see what they're asking for, see what they want, what makes your product more saleable. And that's from the point of baseline, and then where do you get additional business value in moving up the privacy chain. The other thing is expect the laws are going to change. They're going to continue to change. And in the US, you're going to have 53 of them competing with each other before too long, and none of them are going to be the same.
Indeed. Yep. Thank you. That's great. Let's pull in another one. When building a new product like a platform as a service, what security or privacy features are a must? This goes back to table stakes. Again, day one, our tech team believes in, we can add it later, which I don't agree with. Thoughts? How about Neil? You want to take that first?
It's really hard when you're a young company.
Yeah.
It's growth. It's growth at all costs.
Scale.
And
right.
There was a time at a major social media company that the leadership would say, before you remove X accounts, even if they are fake accounts, check with me. I mean, can you imagine that kind of leadership? And then, a different kind of leader is like, no, like that is not the right thing to do. That's we need better controls. We need better, right? Like, and that's like a super hard trade-off to make when you're a public company reporting these numbers, the daily active users. But one way as a product manager to frame this, right? Like, I think this is about convincing people of what the right thing to do is. One way to do this is through this existential long-term risk. If the users can't trust the platform, then we will lose users. And if you're building like a grocery delivery service, like, if it's the credit card number, right? Like, I think there's ways to position and prioritize based on the long-term risks and fines to your company. At Lyft, we built out some new biometric features to detect masks when you're wearing a face mask. Right. And then Facebook was sued for $500 million biometrics, right? Like, there's a lot of concerns. And so, like, that is a much easier thing to convince engineering, say, like, we have to build all this stuff. You're not going to get anybody to argue with that because there was a $500 million fine. But it's such a hard risk calculation when you're a young company. But I think you can do it to advocate for this existential longer term risk.
That's great. Long-term thinking is not what we specialize in, though, especially when you're a startup and trying to just get started, as you said, get traction, right? Yeah.
We're also seeing discounts happening as acquisitions and investments happen when when security reviews are being done by either the acquirer or the investor, and you're seeing valuations go down as a result of missing pieces. So there is there's a negligence level. Yeah, that base level is don't be negligent, and I can't tell you what that means because it'll depend upon your business, but just don't be negligent. Encrypt the stuff, store it, and do what you say what you're going to do, and do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
But on top of that, there's actually business value that valuation value that adds on the more you put this stuff in earlier, because it costs up to 20x more to fix it later.
Daniel, you put this PDF in our sort of pre-doc, privacy front and center. I think this is hitting some of the themes you're talking about. Is this one you put in?
Yeah, I put that in. That was that had come out the day we were putting that up.
Yeah.
So it's like 2 weeks old, I think. Consumer Reports sentiment on consumer privacy, and you are seeing consumers be more and more conscious of it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you still have to look at things like Home Depot breaches and others in which stock valuation goes right back up and continues to increase. And people come out the other side quite positively. And it pains me as a security professional to say these kind of things, but the reality is memory is short.
Yeah.
So these are the kind, just trying to be real about the discussions that your business side will have with you, on those of you on the business side, that you'll have with your technologist to say, okay, so it'll hurt. We'll have a ding for a year, but we'll come out the other side of it stronger.
Yeah. Nice.
I have an example actually
go
of
ahead.
this, to help you convince other people in your organization. So pre-GDPR, Twitter did not collect the user's birth year.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was no way of knowing if somebody was under 13.
Mm-hmm.
Very fun problem to deal with. So if you search for hashtag birthday lockout, that was me, where we had to lock out a bunch of users because it was tainted data, essentially. I don't know what you're going to find. I've never actually searched for it. But essentially, what we had to do is ask people for their year, and then we couldn't tell them why we're asking for that. But what ended up happening was a very costly, millions of users being locked out kind of situation, including celebrities. There are celebrities who signed up when they were underage, and they're overage, but the problem is the data is tainted.
Right.
So yeah, you could do it later, but it's like, I think it's going to cause you a big problem. So try to do some of these like really basic compliance level things. Like,
it's great. Yeah, I did a lot of wisdom coming here, and I've heard a few themes. One, several of you have already echoed that. Aggregate. Don't store every single darn transaction, right? Aggregate it as soon as possible. And so any more of these nugget, golden nugget themes would be great. And you guys are doing great putting those in there. Here's another question. What is the most unique solution to privacy you've seen recently? Anything that surprised you? That's a great question. Anyone? Who's doing it right? Who are you looking at going, damn, that was smart. I love what they did.
There's two answers to this. I think who's selling it right is another question too.
Yeah.
There's a large part of this that's using security and privacy to build trust in the brand and to build confidence. And I think Apple is really doing that quite well right now. They're leaning into it. It's not a feature. It's a tent pole. It is in every messaging. It's in their logos. It's in a lot of what they're doing right now. And I think that is working quite well. So when they had an issue a couple of weeks ago with certificates reporting back IP addresses, by and large, the answer that was given was taken with confidence that, okay, fine, we're going to change it. Sorry, oops, and we move on. Yeah. I don't know that other brands have that kind of have built that kind of trust or have taken that stance. The problem is, though, you have to be able to back it.
Right. Yeah.
Not
one thing to sell it.
It requires you to back it.
Right. Definitely. Gary, have you seen any interesting examples of companies doing it right?
Well, one thing I love, and I don't know how useful this is overall, but now when with Apple, I don't actually have to share my address, my actual address. They will come up with a it'll whip up a nondescript address for me when I buy an app or something like that. I find that to be very useful, and it's neat, and it's put in right when I need it. But I think Daniel, or you mentioned this yesterday, that beginning, I think it's December 8th, next Monday, that Apple will have to disclose more information about how an app actually is operating.
Yeah, I think the privacy nutrition cards go live, are mandatory for all iOS and Mac App Store apps on as of I think the 8th, in which it'll say where is data shared, what's collected, and then in a future update after next year, I think that users will be given a prompt, which is will be a huge UX challenge, but be given a prompt to say, Twitter would like to track you across applications. Do you want to do this? Yes or no? Apple would like to track you across, and each application will give you this presentation. There's evidence that most people when presented with that prompt, will say no. And this is a pretty cataclysmic change in some of the models of how things are monetized and how things are funded. So expect there to be there's going to be some challenges.
Yeah, I think a lot of smaller companies, it actually helps consolidate advertising control for Google and Facebook, because they don't necessarily need that information. And like, it's the way, like, this goes back to like how attribution works. And Apple, I think, has good intentions, right? Like, for the user, you're trying to obfuscate so that people can't like understand and profile you. And it's a very ambitious, a bet. The challenge is like that now all these smaller companies who are trying to pitch the value of ads on their platform. Well, if you're serving ads on Facebook and on Google and my website, you will no longer understand like how much money is being spent where, because Apple is kind of like cut that ability to track across platforms. And so like it is a really good thing to do, but then it's now hurting the smaller publishers and consolidating power for Google and Facebook because they get all the ad revenue. It's a really gnarly problem.
Wow. It is. I mean, it echoes GDPR. GDPR again was also built with the greatest of intentions, but it raises the barrier to entry into that market, and has really pushed a lot of things toward the larger enterprises. I think in a couple of years, those that can weather the storm will be able to get through it as more things become clear, defined in case law, et cetera. But it's been a big challenge, and you're right, Neil. I think this is going to be the same problem, but rooted in the right place.
So you're saying it even raises an equity issue. As good as GDPR was intention, then it's like benefits the big guys, but the little ones have much harder time trying to.
Can
Is
I
that what
jump
you're
in
saying?
here with a question for either Daniel or Neil? Because I think I could explain it, but they'll do a much better job at it. And when it comes to tracking, there's the talk of the term fingerprinting has been around for a couple of years now, but it's starting to get more and more attention. I was wondering if you could explain a little bit about what fingerprinting is and what it might mean to the people who are on this call.
I'll take a crack. It's the holy grail of advertising. What they want to be able to do is have an offline representation of you. So if you are on Instagram and then you go to NewYorkTimes.com and then go to wherever, right? Like, you can join all of that information, centralize your data. The company closest to it, I think, is actually Amazon, which I think is funny that everybody ranks as second. They have a massive advertising business. They want to own the household. Really great article by Ben Thompson's for Techery on it. But the fingerprinting is used for another thing. It's for fraud detection. So a lot of companies, such as Lyft, such as Uber, such as like every e-com website, wants to detect fraudsters. And it comes at a cost to our business, and it then drives up prices in some ways. But what we all want to be able to do, and why there's like a dozen or more, probably 24 companies that try to quote unquote fingerprint a user and nobody's able to do it, is to detect those fraudsters, because they game the systems, they're using fake credit cards, they're hacking accounts, right? Like, this is a weird underbelly problem, but it comes at this real cost of loss of business. And so by quote unquote fingerprint identity, you're able to find those fraudsters. But that's just like not something most consumers care about.
Mm.
Right, but it's also, but it means back to the idea that, some of this data collection isn't necessarily bad on the premise. It's when it's used when it's, depending on how it's used, when used to protect, it's, the data collection itself is not a bad thing. It's when it's used, shared, or done in ways that are not, either not legal or not in the way that the user has agreed to in jurisdictions that allow that the trouble begins. And having that kind of information can be very tempting.
Yes. Yeah.
Especially back to the point that was made in the chat was David Bates, that ads have been a shortcut, and now companies will have to actually have their own value proposition as growth continues. As growth is always a press, and when especially now when austerity is taking hold in various forms, looking for growth, the data is the new oil. There was a economist some years ago coined that, and it's very tempting to have it, if you have it, to use it.
Absolutely. And Dan Moore can tell you, we have product tanks, and often the topic comes up, hey, how do you monetize your data? And they talk, we had a guy a few product tanks ago, remember Reed, the one who's doing the real estate play, the whole prop tech thing? His whole business model was selling the data exhaust. He was all over that thing. So that's how us product people sometimes think. How can we monetize the data exhaust? What give us some pushback on that. Why should we not do that?
Data is a commodity. Build a service that matters. Build something that people want to use. I was very close to the data business. There's dozens of companies out there. They've mostly been purchased by Oracle in some form or the other.
Or Salesforce. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with Neil. This is about making something that matters. Don't rely on the byproduct.
Mm-hmm.
If you're reselling the stuff I put on the front of the driveway that the people pick up for compost.
Mm-hmm.
That I don't think it's not sustainable. There's a lot of competition for it, and there are bigger players doing it better than you.
That's a great place to probably park this. I know we're at the hour, and Daniel, I want to give a little time for a giveaway. I think you have something, maybe a takeaway we could put in the room.
Oh yeah, I just based on a post. So I worked in the library industry along with Gary for some years, and one of the topics that comes up in the library world is about patron privacy. That you should have it's rooted in this ideal that you should be able to walk into a library, take a book off the shelf, open it, read it, close it, put it back, and no one should ever have to know that you were there. You should not feel like you are like you can be penalized or assessed based on what you read. This goes back to immigrants coming to the U.S. from countries in which this wasn't the case. This is rooted in every librarian. And so in the library world, there's all these technologies to obfuscate from the suppliers, from the people who supply the content, to obfuscate who's reading it, to aggregate it to the library. And there was this concern about what happens when they take away these proxies, when the publishers insist on direct access. And what we have here is a white paper response to that, but it ended up translating into how trust plays into your business model, and that the polls, the fully closed system, the only fully safe system is one that's locked, turned off, disconnected from a network, no power, no data on it. Ergo, not at all useful.
Not a system.
Well, exactly. But there's no such thing as perfect security. There's no such thing as perfect privacy. And then when we stop thinking about security as binary and we start thinking about it as balance, finding the right balance of business and protection, doing what's right for consumers, building trust, building balance. This was a white paper that I put together, a piece that I put together that sort of demonstrates that, and talks about how this can actually add business value.
Cool, thank you. And if you could, how could you share that with us to the?
Oh, sure. You know what? I don't have it posted somewhere, but I will put it. Actually, do you have a way to share the PDF I sent you?
Yeah, we'll paste it out. We'll share it with the communities that signed up, that attended this event. How about that?
Perfect.
Yeah. How about a round of applause for our panel? How'd they do? Yes.
Amazing.
Thank you so much. Reed, it's been another Product Tank. Dan, awesome to do this with you. We should do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Thanks for co-hosting, and this was a great discussion. I really appreciate everyone's time, and happy to share this recording out to our entire group.
Yeah, I'll send it over to you as well. I've captured it here.
Thanks, guys, for the amazing free information.
Yes.
You've been monetized. I mean,
I knew it was coming.
We'd like to thank our sponsors, Apple, Amazon, Google.
Lyft. Thanks, y'all.
Awesome. Have a great night.
All right.